Hey, and welcome to another episode of The Lead Story on WAFF.com. I'm executive producer Mike Brown.
And I'm news anchor Margo Gray.
And this is a podcast and a streaming show about movies and journalism where we take a look at a different movie about the news business and kind of talk about what it gets right and what it gets wrong. And we bring on some of our friends to talk about it and tell stories from our careers. And this is episode number 8. September 5, the newest movie we've done. This is just about a year and a half old, from 2004, directed by Tim Fehlbaum. It's the story of the 1972 Munich Olympics and how they were taken over by terrorists and the tragedy of the Israeli Olympians. And with the Olympics just ending a couple of weeks ago, this is a timely one as well. So,
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and bring on our guest. It is someone that the people here in Huntsville know and love. There he is. It's Carl Prather, sports director. Carl, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Mike, Margo, I don't know, some people may know me maybe for the wrong reasons, unfortunately, but no, I'm happy to be a part of your podcast. It's super cool. I'm glad we're podcasting out here, talking a little sports and pop culture and obviously timely events pertaining to this movie that was released a year ago.
Before we get into it, tell people where you are and the fact that you've already had your podcast for a while.
Yeah, so I am in the depths of the Legacy Arena here inside in the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center here. We have our state basketball tournament going on day 2 today. So I'm kind of down here as a game is about to tip off to kind of talk about what we got going on with this podcast that you all have. And of course, my own podcast that we have. We've been doing it for 2 years. It'll be 3 years this July, Take After Take. And we talk about everything but sports, and then we try to sprinkle in some sports. But seriously, we have a lot of fun and really just talk about sports, most notably college football and all of the happenings in the national landscape of sports as well. So it's been fun. Patrick Akers has also been joining me. Kind of call him producer Pat there. So been super fun. Happy that everyone is hopping on the podcast train and getting the opportunity to be a part of the lead story today. I'm super excited.
Now, Carl, one of the things we ask our guests when they come on, just kind of give us your career, how you got to where you are, where you started, and how you got here. You've been in Huntsville a really long time, and that's something we talk about a lot is people will come here for a couple of years and they'll leave. But you, me, Margo, we've been here for a good long time. So just kind of talk about, how you got here and why you've stayed in Huntsville for so long.
Yeah, Mike. With us three combined, it's probably 224 years that we've all been here. We're old. But no, listen, Huntsville's home. It's been 15 years. It'll be 16 years in the month of May. Been wild to think about, but I came here in Memorial Day weekend of 2009. But graduated from Western Kentucky University. Always had a love and a passion for sports. Ironically enough, wanted to be a sports journalist from the standpoint of, as we like to call a scribe. I wanted to be a columnist and do the newspaper route, but I fell in love with sports talk and fell in love with actually being in front of the camera my senior year of high school and as I got into college. And the rest is history and worked at an independent station for a couple of years prior to coming to Huntsville. But yeah, this is home, and it's kind of cool to be part, much like you two understand and know. It's been really cool to be able to grow with a city.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you come to a city and you're there and things are kind of been entrenched there and deep rooted within the community. But we've all kind of grown with the growth of North Alabama and Greater Huntsville in real time, and that's been the case for sports as well. For me, just being able to be a part of this and watch how the landscape of sports from our region and more importantly from a national standpoint and all of the ties to North Alabama and the state of Alabama have kind of all come together in Huntsville while I've been here. So it has been absolutely a joy. It's been a blessing. It's been a love affair that I've had with our communities, how much I care about our communities from a sports standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been really fun, as you mentioned, Mike and Margo. It's just fun to be a part of and being kind of on the ground level of this city's unbelievable expansion over the last 15 years.
And the talent that's here that you've seen go from middle school, high school, and now college out in the pros, and to be able to see that over that 16-year span and for it to happen so quickly. I know sports was already entrenched here. It was a religion, basically. You have your real religion and then your sports religion.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I think seeing the growth of the area and the talent that's coming out of this area is important too.
Yeah, it's especially crazy when you think about something like the Huntsville Stars turning into the Trash Pandas, or even the growth that the Huntsville Havoc have undergone in the past.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
from 1,500 people a game to selling out every game.
Every game.
It's wild, and Carl's been right there, front row center for all of it.
That's right.
All right, so let's
Yeah.
jump in. Let's jump into the movie real quick. Again, it's September 5 from 2004, starring John Magaro as Jeff Mason, a producer of ABC Olympic coverage. Peter Sarsgaard as Rune Ulrich, the president of ABC Sports. Ben Chaplin as Marvin Bader, the operations manager, and Leonie Benesh as Marianne, the translator. So a very small cast of mostly unknown actors, but they turn in a heck of a movie here. So we start with some archival footage. Maybe it's faked archival footage. I couldn't tell. Showing the wide world of sports has come to the Olympics, and they're showing all this old school technology. The backpack going live that looks like it looks like it weighs 650 pounds. And Carl, you being there live in Birmingham doing the reports on the basketball every night, just kind of talk about how we get that live shot from you. We have these things called live views. Kind of talk about those a little bit, because I think it's interesting to watch the technology go from those 600-pound backpacks to like something you can carry with one hand and not even think about.
Yeah, Mike and Margo, I think that we all three of us can attest to there have been mentors and people that have kind of helped us and guided us through our respective careers that told you of the backpacks
The
of
good old
yesteryear,
days.
right?
Yes,
The
right.
good old days. I remember having to wear these backpacks and run film and video back to the truck. For us in the late, early 2010s and the late 2000s, we got into it where it was a kind of unique situation, right? We had live
Yeah.
trucks and microwave trucks, and we had to help run cable, and we had to do so
Put
many
up
of
the
those different
satellite.
types of things, put up the satellite and stuff. So, like, it's really cool to be a part of that. But you mentioned it, Mike. We are at the point now where we legitimately can just, at the click of a button on my cell phone or a small backpack that's maybe less than 3 pounds, can go live from anywhere in the country with a cell phone tower signal, which is unbelievable to think about relative to my first job in the building. We were shooting off of some of the most obscure things, and
Yeah.
now out in 2009, coming here and running cable from the parking lot of the then Georgia Dome into the stadium for this SEC championship game, or going tape to tape. We all remember those days. So it's hard to fathom that here we are in the year 2026. And I mean, at the click of a button, we can go live anywhere in the country.
I was glued to this movie for that reason in particular, because hearing a person like Liz Hurley, who started her career late 70s, early
Yep.
80s, she would talk about the 60 millimeter tape
Yeah.
and having to do supers, your name on a board and having that transposed on the screen. I had never seen it in action. I
Yeah.
heard people talk about it, but to see it in real time, how they put the production together was fascinating to me.
Like when later on in the movie, when they sell their satellite stream to CBS,
Right.
and they're like, well, put an ABC bug on there so that they know it's ours. You kind of see the invention of the bug.
So
and-
that's what I really
yeah.
needed to know. I had multiple questions on, from the producer standpoint, from your perspective, on what was going on. Were they the pool camera? How was that working?
Yeah, I mean, it's different now because I believe everything that is taken is an Olympic pool camera, so they're pulling from the Olympics and then putting their own stuff on top of it. But yeah, in this case, they are the pool camera. And just like NBC only is the only station that has the Olympics that just passed, ABC was the only station with the Olympics back then. So they would feed everything out, and it would work more or less the same way.
But the fight over the satellite time,
Right.
the window.
So that's another thing. The satellites could only have so many signals on them at a time, and there were only so many satellites up there. This is 1972. There's only a handful of. You got to remember the moon landing was 3 years before this. There's only so many satellites up there, so you can only bounce so many signals, and the stations would buy, sell. You saw them horse trading there. I'll give you the noon.
I'll
if you
give you
me
3
the
o'clock
morning.
if you give me 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Right, and there was a lot of that, and that persisted up until just about 10 years ago. But there was just so many more satellites that became, kind of pointless. And
Right.
now with everything being digital and online, it's even more pointless. But yeah, that was just kind of what they would have to trade and swap and sell, that limited amount of bandwidth
Satellite
for those
space.
satellite
Yeah.
shots. And
Wow.
like right now, I could hit a button and look there, I just turned on the Channel 48 thing. You can see right there, and I can hit a button and it goes away. I don't have to do anything to do that. Oh,
That
no,
was
it's
the
not
cool
going
part.
away. I wanted to. Oh, you know.
That was the cool part, though, seeing all of the behind the scenes of old school production
Yeah.
and how they made it look seamless on TV. But so many people, so many hands had to be
Yeah.
involved. You had two guys hauling that camera that was so heavy. Now I know why some of our older photographers talk about their back problems, because those
Yep.
cameras were extremely heavy. You saw in the movie them wheeling out the studio camera that needed 3 people to push that camera out
And
to the hill.
I say that was actually smaller than some of the ones I've seen in my career, and even the cameras that they have out in the field, Carl. Your camera's
5 pounds.
5 pounds
Now.
And what when it started, were you on DV camera? Were you on DV tape when you started, Carl, or were you always digital?
We were, Mike. Yes, Mike and Margo. We were on DVC Pro when I first got here in 2009. I vividly remember that we had that. We had. I remember the gigantic over-the-shoulder cameras where we had DVC Pro tapes, and we had legitimate having to, like, if you wanted to go live, for example, Mike, you can attest to this. Margo, you know this as well. If you truly wanted to go live, think about just from the XLR cables and the things necessary to be able to go live in the back of a camera. If you wanted to maybe go be out on location, or let's just say for the sake of argument, want to do a live stand-up of some sort. Those were the things that people kind of, which this movie did an unbelievable job doing. You look at the size of some of those cameras that they had kind of trying to go up the hill, or Margo, as you mentioned, just the satellite time by itself. I vividly remember the first 4 years here in Huntsville, from '09 to maybe 13 and 14. We had to go back into our engineering area to legitimately be able to have a feed, know what times Auburn or Alabama's coaches were going to talk to us, whether it's football, basketball, or something. They would email us, let us know. Or we would have to barter and trade with other TV stations saying, hey, the feed's coming down at this X amount of time. If you grab this for us right now, we won't be able to grab it because we have something from a news standpoint that we needed to draw into during that time. So that the beginning of the movie kind of brought back some flashbacks, and we're talking 2009, guys. We're not talking like 1970s. We're talking, modern day, where we still are not that far removed, basically 15 years from having to like barter and trade for sat time and being able
Yep.
to access what you need to access across the country.
Yeah, and even if we wanted to go live here locally, like to get a live shot from Hazel Green, you have to make sure that one, the microwave truck is working. Number two, the mast goes up. We've had stories where the mast. We'll show some pictures over this for those of you watching on the stream. The mast would go up. It raises about 10, 15 feet, and
Yes.
sometimes it wouldn't go down. So you could never drive with it up, because if you smash that thing on an overpass or something, forget it. That's
You're losing
tens
your
of thousands of
job.
dollars.
You are losing your job.
So you got to make sure it works, that it goes up, and that you have a line of sight to the antenna, because there were times where you're out in a more rural area, you're like you can maybe get live to something that's called a repeater, which is like a local antenna that then beams back to our antenna. But if you can't see our antenna, you can't go live.
Right.
Which means that there were certain stories that we would always know that, okay, if we're in Hazel Green, we have to go to the fire department, because that's the one place in Hazel Green we can go live from. Even if it's got nothing to do with the story, that's where we have to go if we want to be live.
Right.
And that's not that long ago. That's live use replace the trucks. What, maybe like Carl was saying, 2015, maybe even a little bit later than that. But I don't remember the last time we sent a live truck out for anything.
I know. That's why they're just gathering dust in the parking lot.
But we keep them because, yeah.
If worst case scenario,
Yeah.
if everything were to fail, we still can hit off those satellite
And
trucks.
the last time that happened would probably be April 27th, when all the tornadoes came through and took out all those cell towers. We were back on those microwaves. Nothing
right.
internet worked. So that's why we keep at least a couple of them around for that situation.
Exactly. Get back to the movie then.
Yeah, let's get back to the movies, because I think we're still on the very first scene.
I know.
We got more overnight vibes are coming in. So directing sports, directing news, two totally different things. Before the main action kicks off, we can see the tension between Germany and Israel and the United States. I mean, World War II just ended like 25 years ago, which I did the math. It would have been 1999 to us, is 1945 to them. So those tensions from World War II are still there
fresh.
for everybody.
Which I loved the comment, and I don't know if they put that in particular, or if it really was a decision made
Yeah.
by the German government to not have armed guards
Yeah.
outside of the complex, the athletic complex. What was it called?
The Olympic Village.
There.
Yeah, 'cause it's a bad look.
Right. To have that be a bad look at German guards with guns outside of a gate.
Yeah, and they say several times in the movie, like this is Germany's first big thing on the world stage to show
get it right.
the war's over, we're a new
And
country,
to get it
and
right.
then this happens, and they
it
bungle
was
it so badly.
good. This movie was so good. Why? Because we're lovers of history anyway.
Yeah.
So to see that play out from the perspective of broadcast news was just awesome. I love this movie.
Really interesting perspective.
First time an act of terrorism ever broadcast to the world.
Yeah,
Monumental.
yeah, absolutely huge.
900 million people watched.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, just think
mind-blowing.
about in the years since, and something that's been in the news a lot recently, the Beirut bombing in 1983, 9/11, everything in Israel and Northern Ireland, all that,
That's what I thought about too when we have younger people in our newsroom who were not alive for
Yeah.
9/11 and
Or- yeah.
how we felt. I feel like that's how older journalists would say, like, you weren't there to see 1972, but this was mind blowing.
and those journalists in 1972, you weren't here in 1945.
Right.
It just
It
keeps
just
on
keeps going,
perpetuating.
yeah.
Moving forward in the movie, one thing I did want to point out before the main action kicks off is they have an issue where they're in the control room and the screens start flickering, and they go to the engineer, and the engineer's name is Grumpy. And I thought, holy cow, that is the most perfect engineer name I have ever heard in my life. Because God bless our engineers, they put everything together. We would not be on TV but
Without him.
They are some unique individuals. And a story for me, when I was in radio, we had an engineer named Bill. I worked at a radio station in Athens, WVNN, WUMP. It was a bunch of them over there in Athens. They're all still there. And we had this engineer named Bill, and he had no time for fools.
No.
So anytime any of us on-air people would come over and ask a question, he would, I can't do that. Well, why not, Bill? There's not enough wires. That was his his default for everything. There's not enough wires. And what do you mean there's not enough wires? Like, that's not really the reason, but that's the best explanation I can give you to
Right,
understand.
because I can't break it down for you.
Yeah, I can't explain
You're not going to get it anyway.
It would take me longer to explain. So that just Grumpy made me think of Bill. There's not enough wires. So the movie reminds us again, these are sports people. Like
Right.
they're calling out sports action. They're talking about, I think there's a swimming meet going on where they and they show some volleyball and they're calling action. Take one, take two, take three. So when this happens, you're reminded multiple times, these are not news people in the control room. These are sports folks. And, they may be news adjacent. They may know a thing or two about news, but two totally different
Totally
worlds.
different.
And Carl, you've been called on a handful of times to go out there and do news, hard news like during severe weather, that kind of thing, and obviously huge sports news like Nick Saban retiring, that kind of thing. Kind of talk about switching between sports mode and news mode when you have to.
Yeah, it's so unique because it's almost like, obviously, regardless of what genre or whatever you have going on within your department, within a news station, at one point or another, you're all still under the same proverbial umbrella of just being news. And there are times, obviously, we know this, severe weather can impact and become a news item. We know that sports become a news item. And like you just mentioned, I mean, we're talking, less than 3 years ago, in the middle of an afternoon, uh, you know, sources within the locker room at Alabama are informing me and letting me know that Nick Saban just walked into a team meeting and just basically let everyone know he's retired. And it's one of those things where I know we'll get to this later regarding the movie and kind of our life experiences. It's one thing to kind of be first, but it's another thing to kind of be right. So even though you have sources within there that are kind of giving you some news, you want to make sure you dot every I and cross every T before you want to kind of get the ball rolling to break this news. So it was almost like, case in point with that a few years ago, you start hearing players within the locker room that you have relationships with letting you know that, hey, this just happened in real time. And then it trickles in from coaches, then it trickles in from national media that breaks it. And Chris Lowe, who's a esteemed journalist and sports journalist in the country, broke the news officially, and the ball was rolling. So it was one of those things. I don't remember if Mike or Margo, you were in the newsroom at the time, but I just stood up, and it was almost like there was a meeting of the minds in our meeting room, and we were basically writing things up on the whiteboard
Yep.
to kind of cover this in real time. And that was an all day thing. You're reaching out to former players and those that are program adjacent, those that have played under Nick Saban, those who played years ago under Nick Saban, whether it was in the NFL or college, locally. You're trying to get every aspect to be able to kind of convey this news that is in real time, that is an ongoing story, because it's significant. And much like this movie and much like the Munich Olympics, when you have things that are happening in real time and kind of the meeting of the minds all come together, ultimately the goal is to adequately be able to present the news, more importantly, be accurate. And as we'll talk about more in this movie, you want to be right. You don't have to necessarily be first. And I know we're in a breaking news world, but I think more than any time in our lifetimes, being right is more important than being first.
Yeah.
And I think that was very, very prevalent just from my standpoint when you're dealing with Nick Saban or a significant coach in our community that's maybe retired, some breaking news regarding an athlete, any of that can seamlessly, when it ties into kind of our community, it's just news. It's not
Right.
just
It's
sports
just
news. It's
news.
news.
Right. In
100%.
any aspect, I think those two mindsets will cross when things break. There will be news at the top of your news, sports at the top
Yeah.
of your newscast, because that is the news at that point. In this situation, yeah, we want to cover Israeli weightlifters or whatever it may be, but this became the only story. There is no other story. And I found it fascinating, the push and pull of, we still want to air what's happening while people are still,
It's still going
swimming
on.
or boxing. No, what's happening in the Olympic Village is the story. There is
Yeah.
no other story. This
Yeah,
is what's
it's
happening.
all different pieces of the same story.
Exactly.
And one thing that kind of came to mind to me in terms of just people going across those lines of job title and description is the UAH shooting in 2010. Do you know who the very first reporter on the scene of that was? Was Haley Baker, who at the time was doing a TVL type lifestyle show.
Right.
She had done a couple years of news, and now she's doing a lifestyle show. She just happened to be nearby. She was doing a show at Bridge Street, and we realized Haley's like 5 minutes away. Send her. So all of a sudden, our lifestyle anchor is the first on the scene of a horrible mass shooting that makes national news, and she does a phenomenal job because she's got that news background. So it's just kind of one of the things we see in this movie a lot is taking the pieces you've got and putting them in place.
Or even for the levity of it, Gary was the unsung hero, the production assistant taping video reels to his body to get through the gate, to get into the Olympic Village.
That was my question on you. They're faking his ID. They're putting on the jacket.
I loved it.
Is that a little unethical, maybe, to get
totally
around
unethical.
to get around those police? But once they shut down the scene, and you can't just pop up your phone and do a live view hit.
That's right.
You do what you got to do. So, like Carl was saying, they have that talk where they're in the hallway and they kind of get the riot act. Like, who are the hostages? This is now a news and sports story. Here's how we're going to cover this. And then Peter Jennings walks in, who is an absolute icon, legend in ABC News history. And I don't have a film nerd corner. I've got TV nerd corner this week, where we're going to talk about Peter Jennings, Jim McKay, and Roone Ulrich. These are three characters in the movie who are just absolutely
amazing
legends in our industry.
Amazing. Just watching the producer, that synergy between that producer and Jim McKay. And I didn't realize, Carl, that was authentic, real footage that they used for this movie of Jim McKay. At first I was looking, I was like, man, that's a good Jim McKay. What actor did they find to do that? But no, it's real footage.
Yeah, the only actor is when you see him from behind his head. Otherwise, it's
and
just
to
real footage.
see him seamlessly take what the producer is giving him and deliver and flow between interview and information and delivering it to the audience, it was just beautiful to see.
It's really a demonstration of his skill.
Skill level, man.
And so let's talk a little bit about Jim. Obviously, it's the real Jim we're seeing. It's completely through archival footage, like you said. He hosted Wide World of Sports for 37 years, 12 Olympic Games he was the host of. And that was back in the day when they used to do summer and winter at the same year. So yeah, they did it till 92, 94 is when they split them off.
That's rough to do the same year.
Kentucky Derby, Indianapolis 500, British Open golf. Like, he's done everything.
Wow.
And like me, Jim McKay, a Philadelphia guy. He went to St. Joe's Prep So for those of you who are watching from Philly, he's a St. Joe's prep guy, probably because Cardinal O'Hara hadn't been founded yet. The better high school of the two, obviously.
Stop it.
But yeah, Jim McKay, Philly guy, absolute legend. The one that I really wanted to talk about was Peter Jennings, who, like I said, comes in. He starts giving them, here's journalism 101.
I only
guys.
know Peter from, taking over ABC News World Desk and delivering the news nightly.
Yeah.
But who knew? I did not know his history of being a foreign correspondent for years and years and years.
So interesting. I did some deep dives on Peter Jennings while trying to figure out his story, and really interesting was before this he was actually on the anchor desk before this, and he was 26 years old, and he was made the anchor of ABC News, national news, and he was Canadian, which you may or may not know.
Yeah, I knew
So
that.
he would be pronouncing things wrong all the time. Like when he was doing a military story, he'd say lieutenant instead of lieutenant.
Oh.
He would have that British Canadian pronunciation. And so people thought, who's this guy? I didn't know what the heck he's talking about.
Right.
He doesn't understand these American sayings, these American slogans.
Got to get him off the
Got to
desk.
get him off. So they punted him to the overseas desk. And rather than, get discouraged, he's like, all right, I'm just going to come over to the Middle East and kick ass
be
for
an
the next couple of
expert.
years and become an expert.
Yeah.
And so he did that for years and years. And this
To
was
know the guerrilla commando groups,
Yeah,
or
that's-
how are we going to call them?
That was
Terrorists.
another thing I wanted to talk about. It's
Yeah.
something we even do today. Illegal immigrants versus undocumented workers. We have that conversation in the newsroom. Well, which is which? When do we use which? What's the difference? And, to a lot of people, it's semantics, but to the people involved, they're like, call me this, don't call me that. And then on the other side of, when it's a political story, oh, don't you call them that. That means everything's got these little
Words carry
landmines
weight.
under them. They have weight to
carry
them.
weight.
Yeah, so you got to be real careful with what you're saying. So the Munich Olympics, that was kind of Peter Jennings' chance to get back into the spotlight. And when Rune Ulrich took over ABC News, which, by the way, Rune Ulrich in charge of ABC News and ABC Sports at the same time. That's insane.
Yeah.
Insane. Absolutely insane. Probably from the Munich, that's when he saw, okay, Peter Jennings, you're my guy. You and me, we're going to the top.
Yeah, you knew your
And
stuff,
he
and
took
we
him.
need you in
And,
front of the
yeah.
camera at all times.
Yeah, I grew up in an ABC household. Peter Jennings was my guy
Yeah.
from the time I was little. So, very tragic. He passed away at a relatively young age, in his 60s, I think, with the cancer. And he's shown smoking throughout the entire movie, kind of giving you that foreshadowing a little bit. And then one more quick mention, Carl, you might know this guy, Rune Ulrich, absolute legend in sports. He basically invented Monday Night Football, Wide World of Sports. He basically invented the live replay when he realized, wait a minute, we can go back and show that again. So he was named one of the most important Americans of the 20th century by Life magazine, and most people probably have never heard of him, but he had that big of an influence over sports and news.
Yeah.
So, and then
that was
The instant replay,
that was
Carl.
really quick. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. Just because I'm a historian of sports broadcasting and love sports. That's the one thing that I always smile when I watch Monday Night Football back in the day and when we were growing up and whatnot. Rune was just so influential from the things that we as sports fans or casual sports fans take for granted. And that's numero uno, is just the fact that, he came up with the idea of not only Monday Night Football, but being able to have the opportunity to go back and watch said replay of a big play or a questionable call before there was, obviously instant replay in this day and time, but just to be able to see the play again was huge instead of
And to
just
slow
seeing
it
it as a
down.
one-off in real time, and to slow it down. And going back to really quick what we were discussing about equipment and whatnot, we understand it because we're in this profession. People don't understand the how much it would take to be able to come back, replay a play, and then to in real time slow it down, all while said broadcasters, your color guy, your play-by-play, can kind of go over this in real time. It was art. It
It's
doesn't seem as much as it now, but that was unbelievable back in the 70s.
it's hard to do it today, even with everything being
Correct.
digital and in real time. It's hard to do it today. Doing it back then, tape to tape, forget it.
I know.
Insane. Like you see, like we mentioned the Huntsville Havoc earlier. They've got an outstanding production team. They can do that on the fly in the arena, and that's like NHL level stuff they're putting on down there. And it is not easy. It is not easy because I worked for the Havoc in the production department for 10 years. That is a difficult thing to do.
But the crowd is none the wiser. It's just entertainment. It is
Yeah.
just what comes with watching sports at this point. But there's so much that goes into it
Yeah.
behind the scenes that we, folks who have the sheer talent,
Yeah.
make it look seamless.
One more thing before we get off Roone Ulrich, just because I left off like two of his most impressive accomplishments. He invented Nightline in 2020. I mean, sports. Carl listed as sports Nightline in 2020 alone are enough to get you in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And that's just like two afterthoughts for him. So
Wow.
absolutely incredible. And a fourth guy, Carl, who I'm sure you got a lot to say about, Howard Cosell also makes a little bit of an appearance in this movie. We don't see him, but we hear him on the phone. I would think our audience knows who Howard Cosell is, but Carl, what are your thoughts on Howard Cosell, the legend?
Yeah, before, for those that in this day and age remember and know who Stephen A. Smith are and the Skip Baylesses of the world and our quote unquote, as we like to say, talking heads in sports that we maybe did not have 20 years ago, much like we did in news. Howard Cosell was that voice. He was the voice of sports from an opinion standpoint. It was the very first time that instead of objectively just here's the score, here's who won, here's who lost, there was someone that brought a little pizzazz, controversial, uh, things that made you think, things that made a man or a woman on Mondays coming out of the weekend have that proverbial water cooler talk, right? And he was the first kind of personality in sports that took sports to another level. And obviously, for those that may remember, or your aunts or uncles, or those that remember back in yesteryear, or those that are watching the stream, people remember, the back and forth with Muhammad Ali and how he helped to elevate Muhammad Ali to another stratosphere because Muhammad would always give him opportunities to be able to speak. As a Kentucky native and Muhammad Ali, born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, he is the quintessential legend in our city. And to have an opportunity to kind of bring Muhammad as not only a great fighter, prize fighter, but bring him on a national stage, Howard Cosell had a lot to do with that. But he was just responsible for, to me, elevating sports where it was more than just stats and scores. It was opinionated, and people could actually have a full-fledged opinion about sports in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was the Monday Night Football guy. Like you said, you think of Howard, you think of Muhammad Ali. They're linked like forever.
Yeah.
So just four absolute legends in this movie, just kind of getting the hero treatment, which I thought was really interesting. But of course, the big hero of the movie, or not hero, but the focus of the movie is this guy Jeff, who is just a sports producer trying to do his best, trying to tread water here as like history is happening around him, and that's insane. Like we see them MacGyvering to get the phone linked together.
Right.
Right now, again, you can push a button and we got somebody on the phone. We're talking to Carl live in Birmingham through the internet. But back then, they're just soldering and taking apart phones. It's crazy stuff. But we see Jeff's news instincts come through when the guy dressed up as the Olympian comes back with his first footage, and they show that video of that iconic shot of the gunman there on the balcony, and he says, "That's the open."
Yeah.
That's the open right now, and that is so important. Picking those visuals and those sound bites for your show. And Margo, as a reporter, how do you identify like what is going to resonate with viewers?
You know it from the minute you see it, whether it's just the video itself or the sound, whatever bubbles up to the surface that is the best video you have that will grab attention, that grabs the ear as well as the eye. That's your open. You don't wait for that. That's what you show off the top of the show because it's one of those moments that says, wow, I have to sit down and watch this. You have to grab people at the end of the day. We are there to make you want to watch.
Yeah. And Carl, same thing for sports as well. You're at the press conference, the coach says something off the wall, or you're filming the game and there's this incredible one-handed grab. How do you mark those in your mind to come back to them later once you're putting it together?
I do truly believe this. I believe it's an innate ability, but I also believe for yourself, Mike and Margo, I think that's a lot of just unbelievable blessings being mentored and trained by people to kind of understand what that looks like, what's the sound, what's the bite, what's the aha moment, as we've heard in pop culture before. And it's something that it when you hear it, or when you see it. I'm here in Birmingham for state basketball, and yes, we have teams that win or lose, but what's better than to have a buzzer beater to start the show if you have that before your 6 p.m. newscast or your 10 p.m. newscast? what's better than to have an unbelievable soundbite from a coach that tells you about how special his group was, or a tearful farewell to a team that reached the state championship or a national championship at the collegiate level or the pro level, if we have any local ties to that. So I truly believe it's something that you just know it when you see it. It's not anything that you're technically looking for, because we're going to deliver the news
Yeah.
regardless. But there's nothing better than to be able to kind of have that moment when you know that's what should lead your show. That's what should lead the A block. That's what should lead your sports block each day.
And it's doesn't even have to be like news, breaking dramatic sports. This past weekend, I'm putting together the news on Sunday, and Nolan Crane, the weekend editor, comes over with his phone, as he does, whenever there's something going on. Mike, take a look at this. The Space and Rocket Center just announced some new mascots. Do we want to put these in the show? I don't know, maybe. Let me see. Oh my God, yes.
Take a look at this. The U.S. Space and Rocket Center has unveiled 2 brand new mascots. The museum, with a surprise announcement on social media this afternoon.
Because you see that picture of the mascots and they're so bizarre looking, they're going to get a reaction, positive, negative. People are going to be, and that's another thing is you got to think about your online audience as well. Like what is going to go, you don't want to say, no, this is going to go viral, but if it happens organically, like this has the potential to do that.
We have short attention spans, even more so now than before. So whatever we thought was a grabber to make you sit down for a minute or 2 minutes, now I have to catch you within 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So,
and,
very
boy,
different.
Those mascots sure did that for me. So moving forward in the movie, we see the translator. She's hacked the German police radio, so they're able to follow along with what's going on. Then the big kind of moment in the movie happens, which is where the German police are on the roof, and they've got their guns out. They're like on the radio quietly, we're going to make the move. We're going to take this down. And one of the guys in the control room goes,
Is that a TV on?
yeah. Can they see this? Can they watch us? No, they can't.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they can. They all have access to ABC.
And they were watching.
And that's where that conversation comes in. How much are we giving away by being live, showing this all live? How much are we being used by the gunmen to tell their story as opposed to us telling the story? How much are we in control versus they are in control?
There has been a refinement and tweaking over the years by what police do, investigators do, their approach, and how we approach. I don't know. Yes, we saw a perimeter set up, but it was porous there at the Olympic Village because you saw how people could still easily get through and could film all of what was going on.
Yeah.
But there is a reason why police cordon off areas and keep us blocks away at certain points, because it's a safety factor. If those gunmen decided to just start shooting from the balcony, now we have innocent lives off the balcony as well. So it's just a balance that I think we've all refined since 1972 to know what to shoot, what not to shoot, and, to keep our distance.
And it should be obvious, not give away tactics and positions and that kind of thing. Geraldo drawing lines in the sand in Iraq saying this is where the troops are. He got, almost had his career ended over that.
Of course, and it should have been.
And and that's the kind of thing that it's so rare we don't even think about it, because of course we're not going to show that live. Why would you? But they still want to have that in place just to make sure that someone who doesn't know what they're doing, like the September 5th crew that day, doesn't show it on TV.
And they're thinking with a sports mind, action, action, action.
Right. When it first starts, you can see Jeff in the control room calling out the news exactly like it's sports. He's saying, all right, camera 1, Howard, then take 2, Jim, turn right. And Rune has to come in, touch him on the shoulder and say, this isn't volleyball.
Right.
So that was a huge part of the movie there as well. Just kind of moving forward, the police realize that, ABC is showing all of our moves. The police bust in and shut them down for a minute. Eventually, Rune gets on the phone and says, no, get back up live. We see the gunman with the gun right to the hostage's head. Like the first thing we see when the cameras get switched back on is that hostage at the window. And that's just, again, one of those incredibly
dramatic moments. Are you about to show the execution of a hostage on live TV?
And that's the debate they have in the hallway. Like, can we show that? Should we show that? Do we have any control over that? And that's just one of those things where we talked about last week in the episode with Malcolm about you've got to take those live feeds with a huge amount of responsibility because you never know what's going to pop up in them.
Absolutely. And being smart. Obviously, anything can happen.
Yeah.
I think now, you were talking about instant replay. Networks are on a delay for reasons such as that if there is something that is so detrimental to the public to show, that you can edit that out and be respectful and have that responsibility to protect your audience as well.
And moving forward again, the hostages get moved to the basement. They get into the buses, and then Howard Cosell is there on the phone, right place, right time, and that's so important in news, just having someone in the right place at the right time, and sports as well. Carl, kind of talk about that a little bit. Like, you guys put a lot of thought into where you position yourselves during games, during the post game. There are meetings during the week about that.
Yeah, great point, Mike. You always want to kind of to prepare for the long game. I've always said this in our line of work, whether it's sports or news. I always say that you always want to play the next play. We get a lot of times for us, we get very enamored for the here and now and what's going on, especially in a breaking news setting, much like what occurred when the hostages in Munich. But I think the really cool thing that this movie really told as we headed to the middle part of the movie and toward the end, you mentioned Howard Cosell. The mere fact that boots on the ground knew exactly kind of the landscape of the Olympic Village and beyond, and had an idea of maybe kind of positioning themselves to be ahead of what possibly could unfold in real time later. And I can kind of attest to that. And those in the news business and the sports business, we know this. We've had breaking news daily or significant moments in our careers, even here in North Alabama, where it's one thing to have the breaking news and have utter chaos as we're trying to, dissect where and what to do. It's another thing to be able to kind of play ahead of the game and be able to kind of go to places and be in different locations so that we can kind of be ahead of the game. And I think this movie did a really good job of sports meeting news, but everyone involved in this sad ordeal and situation, understanding environment, where to go, what to do, but more importantly, anticipate news that will be happening in real time that weren't happening maybe 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, like when they have that meeting in the hallway, who are the hostages? Who's going? Peter Jennings. Well, it could be this group. It could be that group. It could be this offshoot group. It's about having that knowledge and knowing what to do with it. Skipping like ahead to the end of the movie after everything's happened, Jeff's in the office with Rune. He's commiserating. He's expecting to get reamed out, expecting to get fired. And the first thing Rune says is, all right, we got to start thinking about tomorrow. There's going to be a memorial. There's going to be all these people honoring him. Peter Jennings busts in like, all right, I have some thoughts about what to do tomorrow. And, Carl, that's something you guys think about with sports as well as news is, again, something we talked about with Malcolm. If you have a bad day, too bad, man. We're starting from zero tomorrow. We get another chance tomorrow.
Mike and Margo, I say this, and it's kind of like we're in real time with athletes in the games that we are able to cover. I've said this to weekend reporters and those that have just joined the sports world or those that have been there a long time and have had a bad day. Something didn't go right. Something went wrong in a live shot. We have to be much like athletes or football players from the standpoint or an athlete. We have to play the next play.
Shake it off.
Play the next play. Because guess what? I can't, no matter how good, bad, or indifferent that live shot was, how amazing it was, and how great of a job that Margo Gray and Mike Brown said the sports department did for this breaking news. Guess what happens? We have something else that we need to get to immediately after that. We can reflect back on that later. But that is the one big thing that I've always laid true, and I love that at the end of the movie. Here's a guy that his whole world, he has a love affair with sports. He's going into an office thinking that his career is over. He's about to lose his job. And there was no hesitation. What are we doing tomorrow? What can we do better? What can we move forward to make when we have this breaking news? Because it's going to happen that we're prepared even better than when we were before. And I just really, Margo can attest to this, and Mike and those that are in news watching this, we always are just looking ahead. We don't have, unfortunately, the time to say, oh man, that was great. We can reflect later. We can reflect when we're retired. But that's the gift and the curse of what we do. We're able to have to do that, house it, and support a community and make sure that we are being community members to convey our news. But we don't have time to reflect and have those, triumphant hero parades because we did a good job on a Monday because Tuesday's going to be here.
Yeah.
You spoke about, because we jumped ahead to the end, but we have to talk about
circling
the
back
quote.
Yeah.
as we're hearing,
That's
and the decision to
yeah.
go without a second source with the information that these hostages are alive.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to circle back to. So the rumors, so the hostages go out to the airport. They lose their huge advantage they had. It was like they're right over there. We can monitor what's going on. That's gone. They're
Right.
now having to go by. The radios don't work anymore. There's no cell phones.
Right.
And
So it's a game of telephone at
it's a
that
game
point.
of telephone, and there's celebrations out at the airport. Something good must have happened. German TV just said all the hostages are free. Well, that's two sources to me. That is not two sources. That is, and then as you said, the as we are hearing thing, which is something that has not come up on this show yet, which I'm surprised. We're 8 episodes in. We haven't talked about attribution yet. Attribution is such a huge deal
Right.
to us. So what he was, for those of you who are maybe not familiar with it, what he was trying to do with Jim McKay there with that as you are hearing is hedge his bets, which is if we're wrong, we're not wrong. We're just hearing that this happened. We're
Right.
not saying this happened. We're saying that this is what we're hearing. And that is something we have to deal with every single day out in that newsroom. We hear scanner calls all the time that are not what is actually happening on the
Right.
ground. We can't report that until we have it confirmed. And there are so many of those little wiggle words and wiggle phrases, as we are hearing, allegedly, sources say that they
Could run you into trouble if they're
they will
wrong.
run you into trouble if they're wrong. They serve their purpose, which is to say, we're not saying this. Huntsville police say this. The Madison County Sheriff's Office says this. This may or may not be the case. This is what they're saying. But at the same time, people are hearing that from you,
Right.
specifically, Margo, as the anchor, the face, the voice of this.
I will always attribute. I have gone out to schools and universities to talk about this very subject. I have no opinion. I cannot share. In sports, you can share your opinion. I cannot share my opinion whatsoever. I have to attribute. Doctors say, experts say, police say, investigators say.
Right.
You will always hear at the beginning of my sentence those phrases. Sources say comes out when I know I have checked every source that I have, and I've had at least 3 people tell me the very same thing. And I still feel nervous, but I have confidence in approach to say, you know what? I have it on good accord that I have checked this with 3 sources, and I can attribute it to them. They may not want to be named, but I know I'm right.
And at the same time, when we attribute things, there are situations where we're attributing things that are wrong to people. Like police say this. Well, that's not what actually happened. Well, that's what police say happened. And then we get not in trouble, but we get calls and comments from the community saying, well, that's not what happened. And the only response we have, that's what police say. If you would like to tell us your version of what events, please come tell us.
But the police narrative changes.
Right.
And we know that. And this is at this time. I've used that phrase before. At this time, this is what we know. Because police change and alter and have more facts that give us a bigger picture of what happened. But that is as you said, the curse that comes with news, because we are doing things in real time and things evolve.
Yeah. And the best case scenario is there's a situation where we'll get some video of an incident. Okay, here's what this source says about this. As you can see on the video, you and I are watching this together, seeing the same thing. Now, what does it mean? What is the background? What is the context?
What happened before? What happened after?
That we can only attribute to, whoever tells us what the background and context is.
Right.
But here's what we see and what we can undeniably say. Whether it means what we think it does or not, TBD. And that's one of the most frustrating things, because, as the internet has grown, our audience has gotten more sophisticated. They know those wiggle words. They know, I see what you're doing with that. You're kind of hedging a little bit. Give it to me straight. And we can't. We weren't there. Here's the best we can do. If someone has more information, please come forward, tell us. We would love to hear it. And Carl, you were talking earlier about when Nick Saban retired, you got those those rumors from the locker room started to trickle out. How do you confirm a story like that?
That's a great point. Yeah, I think going back to what Margo said, we always kind of had that rule of thumb where if you are going to be sure to maybe report something that's factual, you want to have at least three attributions or attributed to 3 separate people that are kind of telling you the same thing. But when you start, for us in the sports world, we have to really rely on, from a source standpoint, and those that we trust, or enough attribution that we can kind of go with that. But in the case that someone questions or asks, is this truly factual? You best believe you better have attribution there to be able to report, whether it's from a regional, national standpoint or a local standpoint in the news world and the sports world, of course, along with the news world. But yes, that case in point, I vividly remember that afternoon. I did not go with that, even though a year prior, I had heard confidently that Nick Saban more than likely was going to retire, even at the Rose Bowl that year, because they played in the Rose Bowl in January, just on the sideline and walking pregame. The murmurs just continued to grow louder. And we all, as we know, as journalists, have a responsibility to not just go with everything and anything out there in the world when it pertains to our business. So even that day, that fateful day where Nick Saban called it a career, we had to remember that, yes, there are those in the locker room that are there in real time, part of this meeting, that are hearing this in real time. But we also want to make sure, once again, much like our movie, when we discuss about the hostages being alive and or dead tragically, you want to be right and you don't want to jump the gun. And yes, does it sound fantastic that Carl Prather at WAFF TV, Alabama, was able to break this Nick Saban news that he indeed was retiring and be first? Yeah, but it also would look absolutely terrible if I go with 2 to 4 men in a locker room and Nick Saban decides to change his mind, or it wasn't set in stone 15 minutes later. You want to make sure that you're right instead of being first. And that was very, very important when it came to that news kind of being, sent out to the world in a matter of 15 minutes,
Yeah.
that the whole country knew that Nick Saban was retiring.
And that goes back to something we talked about in episode 1, All the President's Men, where they tell that story. I'm going to fire the FBI director. The president says he's firing the FBI director. You know what? I'm not going to fire the FBI director just because you reported it. That happens too. So wrapping up here, since we're running up against the clock, we'll do a real quick I Know That Guy. Mostly unknown actors, like I said. Jeff was played by John Magaro, who is best known for Past Lives and Umbrella Academy, a couple of minor roles there. Peter Jennings is the guy I want to talk about. Ben Walker, Broadway guy, played Peter Jennings. He originated a role called Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. Have you ever heard of that? It's kind of like Hamilton before Hamilton was Hamilton. Like some people accuse Hamilton of cribbing from Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. It was a really weird show. It did not do well, but Ben Walker's forever tied with that. And he also played another president named Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter.
Oh, okay.
So if you've ever seen Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, that is Peter Jennings. He's also in some Amazon Lord of the Rings show that I don't think anybody's watching. So final thoughts on this movie. Margo, you really enjoyed it.
I did. One, because it was a draw on something that happened in real life. That's what I love to watch most. 9 times out of 10, give me a real story, because real life is better than anything you can come up with and make up.
Yeah.
So, and then the tie with, I've always said this, I know news is great and we have awesome stories, but sports, there's just a different, when sports is told well, because these are human stories no matter what. Sports just lends itself to something so amazing as well. I just loved it. The seeing all the background of what it took to put that broadcast on, and the push and pull of, are we a sports, is the sports team going to take over this news story? I just loved all aspects of it.
You're telling me before we went on air the history of it as well. Just it's fascinating to get that glimpse.
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard about Munich, but never knew the number of athletes, who they were, the weightlifter or the coach that was killed first, or anything like that. It just made it real for me.
Yeah,
Reading it in a history book is one thing, but seeing it play out is totally different. And we have YouTube now to go back and look at those broadcasts, but that wasn't around before to see all of that. You had to watch it. The 900 million people who were watching it real time.
It's the saying, journalism is the first draft of history. This is what that movie is. Carl, your final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, excellent movie. I just love kind of piggybacking off what Margo mentioned from a sports standpoint, and love a lover of sports history to be able to, young in my life, adolescent life, and understanding what the magnitude of that event that happened, and then to actually, because Mike, you had to tell me, I did not know there was a movie even about this. I'm not a big movie guy, but to see that and to watch it, and I truly enjoyed it because, as Margo mentioned, real time, real life things that happen, and then of course tying it into what we do daily, and to see the inner workings of how they were able to break news and be up to date 24/7 in a news cycle in that time relative to the technology and the equipment and the resources that they had during that time. It was a really good movie.
Well, Carl Prather, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, make sure to watch Carl every weeknight at 6 and 10. Follow that podcast, Take After Take. Where can people find Take After Take? Well, if they found us, they can find that. They can find that, right? Where is that, Carl?
Absolutely. We make a joke. All 7 of our watchers and viewers, they can watch it on Apple iTunes. You can find that there, Spotify, and then of course you can find it on our 48 Sports Zone app. That's free to download on Apple iTunes and the Google Play Store as well. And then of course on our website WAFF.com also. So yeah, a lot of places to find it where podcasts are available.
Yeah, there you go. If you find us, you can find Carl and Pat, and they put on a great show. It's highly entertaining. I definitely recommend it. Carl, thank you so much for being with us. Margo, I'm really excited about episode 9. Why don't you tell the people what it is?
Episode 9 is Twister, the movie Twister, with the one and only guest chief meteorologist Brad Travis.
That's right. Brad Travis is going to go through Twister point by point and tell us what's
tell
right
us everything
and what's
that's wrong with it.
Can't wait.
Yes.
That's going to be a big one. So make sure to join us in 2 weeks for Twister with Mr. Brad Travis. Make sure you're following us on Instagram and on Letterboxd as well. As Carl just said, all the places you can find Take After Take is where you also find us. Special thanks to Darren Narado as well as Javon Williams. Ashley Adair has been doing some editing for us. So
Get
thank
out.
you, Ashley.
Oh, Ashley.
The team is growing. Pat Akers, of course, the co-host of Take After Take, is also the executive producer of this show as well. So thank you to all those fine people. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks with Twister.
And now, Twiggy, the water skiing squirrel.
That's right.